G'day, my name's Steve and you're watching Reevesy Workshops. Today we're going to talk about recommissioning my locomotive Majestic. So Majestic is an LBSC Rainhill that's been doubled up in size, and it's my little convention engine that I used to take to the AALS conventions. It's actually been to almost every state in Australia. Great little engine to run, steam's nice and free, but due to work commitments I haven't been able to run it for a few years, so now I'm going to get it going again and have some fun with it at a inter-club event that's coming up very shortly. So I thought today I'd talk a little bit about how I'm going to get the engine going again, and hopefully that may help you if you're in a similar situation. So the first thing to do was to give the engine a really good clean, then oil it up, all the moving parts, while I check everything to make sure nothing's broken, damaged or missing. Then to put some compressed air in the engine. You can see there that we're nearly at 100 pounds. So that proves that the pressure gauge is still working, and of course the engine is running, and it runs in reverse as well, which is great. The mechanical lubricator is operating, which is great as well. So we know the engine is sound. When I last used the engine, I made sure I blew all the water out of it and got all water out of the fittings and other places, so I knew everything was dry. So there's no need for me to pull the boiler apart or any of the fittings apart or anything like that. It was all good. So next stage now is to see if the water gauge is okay and that the pumps are working. So we'll put on a little bit of speed here. And if we have a look in here, we can see the overflow from the pump is pumping water, so I know the pump is primed, all the valves aren't sticking. So we'll operate the bypass valve now, which will redirect water into the boiler, and immediately the engine slows down, so that means it's under load. That suggests water is going into the boiler. Have a look at the overflow again, no water coming out of there, got to be going somewhere, so it has to be going into the boiler. And we can see the water level there is really good. Next stage is to test the hand pump, the emergency hand pump. We need at least 2 independent means of putting water in the boiler before we can get a boiler test done. So I'll put the extension handle in, makes a little bit of noise as it works, but I can feel that's pumping water in the boiler. If we have a look at the water gauge glass between the axle pump and the hand pump, that water level's gone up really high, so definitely these two things. So now we can go on to the next stage and do a hydro test on the boiler. Before we do that, however, I'll just check that the safety valve is working properly, because the air compressor, although it runs at 120 psi and the safety is set for 100 psi, I've got a few leaks in the air system, so we're not quite getting 100 pounds. So a quick test is to lift it like that to see it hasn't stuck. It's seated again, and I can hear it sizzling, so we know that the safety valve's okay. But of course we'll need to prove that again once we do the steam test. So the next stage is to give the boiler a hydraulic test. So I've filled the boiler completely up with water. You'll notice the engine's sitting on a slight downward slope. Done that so that the air that might be trapped in here will come up to here. I use the pump to flush any air out before putting this fitting on. This fitting now goes to a test pump, which has also been primed. If there's any more air left, it will flow up here to the highest point where I open the valve, let it out, shut everything, and now I can pump the boiler up using the auxiliary hand pump, which has a gauge calibrated against the boiler inspector's gauge. I know whatever pressure it reads, this will read. That enables me to make sure I've got an accurate test. You see the pressure is falling, and that's because we've got a few leaks here and there from glands that have dried out over time. I've got an LBSC disc in a tube regulator, which is steam tight but not watertight. So you can see water coming out, and that's why the pressure keeps dropping off. But apart from that, the boiler itself I know is sound. So if we go and have a look, I'll put a mirror under here and I can check all the stays on this side. I can check the tubes, you can even see the superheaters there. And the smoke box, it's all nice and dry. This side here I can also see is nice and dry. The back head, nothing leaking from there either. Another little trick is to look under here and see if you see any water coming out of the lagging. You can see that it's all dry, so the engine's going to pass the test. So the next stage is for me to take it up to the boiler inspector and get him to do the test. He'll also do a steam test, and I'll show you all these things in another video. Okay, having successfully got a boiler certificate, next thing I want to do is clean the injector, and it hides under the locomotive, so you can see I've had to put it on the bench on its side. Something new I'm trying is a jeweler's ultrasound, which in old days I used to use lemon juice off my lemon tree outside. But this is something new that I'm trying out, so be interesting to see how it goes. So I've got Majestic's injector in there, plus a spare one just in case. So while we've got Majestic sitting here, I'll show you some of my friends' locos. So here's a 7 1/4 inch gauge titch. Love the name. Make a good pair together, don't they? And then another treat for you guys, my good friend from New Zealand, with the New Zealand Railways K-Class tank engine.
Where am I stepping?
Actually, I'm mistaken, it's not a K, it's a Q. The K's are the tender version.
Probably have lost weight.
So there you go, that completes the recommissioning of Majestic. Since steaming, of course, I've brought her home, cleaned all the tubes and the ash pan, so she's all clean inside. Give her a good clean outside, and as you can see, a little bit of a polish as well. Now she's good to go for her next run. Hope you enjoyed the video and got something out of it. See you next time.